Hi, this is Igor Jablokov, and I am CEO of Pryon, which is an artificial intelligence startup. Um, and that's about it.
All right, Igor. Well, welcome to Humans of Data Science, and thank you for being on the show. I think the first question I'd like to ask you is to just tell us a little bit more about Pryon, kind of why did you start it, and who are your target clients?
Sure. For us, our target client is essentially the totality of the Fortune 500. I believe that a more natural way of interacting with applications and data is necessary. Um, Given the tsunami and vastness of just everything that we have to deal with at work. It's just too much. It's not human scale any longer in terms of all the signals and messages that people get and have to be attuned to in order to perform their duties.
Okay, so what exactly does that mean? What does Pryon do to help address that?
I think if you look at the Siri experience, Alexa experience that people are now accustomed to at home, we
Hmm.
want to bring that same ease of use to your workplace.
Hmm. Okay, all right. I don't actually use Siri. I'm a little creeped out by it because it just listens to you all day, right? Or is that Alexa? I don't use any of them, but
Okay.
yeah, I know
Well,
you're.
I don't know that it's listening all day, but it's probably a listening part of the day.
Yeah, I think even the part of the day is enough for me. Not that I have anything I think interesting to talk about that people would care about. It's just the feeling of somebody sitting in your room with you kind of creeps me out. But I know there are so many people that use it, and I'm sure there's a need. And I think soon enough I'll probably hop on board myself. I have two small kids that I think would probably love to ask that thing questions all day long. I always hear about kids loving this technology.
Right, and they'll grow up with it. I mean, for them, it's just going to be a synthetic friend.
Hmm.
And the fact that they can ask endless why questions, which is something they're really good at. Um, for people like me, it was we're just fascinated about a myriad of topics, and so asking why, and getting answers in a sub-second was always a thrill for us. There was always the accessibility component, right? In order to democratize access to applications and data, to new, classes of humans that want to enter the workforce, right? Whether it's senior citizens, whether it's, disabled persons. I mean, there's a lot of good that comes from these types of technologies, and I know it's more popular to talk about the dark side of things than the light side of things.
I prefer to talk about the light side of things and how we can use AI and data science and technology for the good of humankind. I know it's not as interesting to talk about, but that's just me. I'm not scared of the evils of AI. I mean, I'm sure that things are already happening and things might get worse, but I still think there's so much benefit that we can reap from the technology. All right, moving on. So you were the CEO of Yap for about 5 years, and can you just talk about that experience and how speech recognition has evolved since the company was acquired by Amazon, I think about 7, 8 years ago?
Sure. So I used to lead the advanced multimodal research team at IBM, and so a lot of these things that are similar to the HomePod experience, Amazon Echo experience, the Google Home experience. They were all being experimented on. The Fire TV experience, Apple TV experience. We were experimenting with a lot of those types of endpoints, right? In terms of trying to, get our speech recognition into as many devices as possible. We were in cars, for instance, in Honda navigational systems. We were trying to put things on television, so on and so forth, and certainly smartphones.
Mhm.
And that's when we started wrapping our minds around hosted speech recognition. So essentially, cloud-based AI, being the future. And it's not something that they wanted to do. And so,
IBM?
no, they didn't want to do it. And so, in 2006, I left, and we founded Yap as the world's first AI cloud company. And the shining star of that experience was meant to be an AI assistant. And back then, it literally was designed to operate on a flip phone. That was very prevalent back then, but nobody understood what we were talking about. And so we, in 2007, demoed it in front of a live stage of an enormous audience at the first ever TechCrunch conference.
Okay.
And people didn't know what they were looking at. And they were scratching their heads. Why would you talk into an AI in order to do searches, in order to shop, in order to check weather, and find music, when you can just open up a laptop and browser and do these things from there? And so we didn't shelf it. We turned it into a Skunksworks program. And so behind the scenes, even though we were considered a speech cloud, where people would send us voicemails and phone calls and things of that sort in order to process it, behind the scenes, we continued working on that original idea.
And by we, did you have a partner, or who's the we?
Yeah, well, I mean, we had a whole team that we started hiring away from IBM and from Nuance. I started the company with my brother.
Oh,
cool.
So
he was the chief operating officer. He had more of an operational engineering background, and so we worked well together.
Nice. So, how do you think speech recognition has evolved over the past 7-8 years? Have you, been keeping in touch with how that company's doing? Or I know it's been acquired by Amazon, but what's kind of happening with all that now?
Yeah, I mean, it's, in 2012 or thereabouts, right? Everything moved to neural networks and all this deep learning stuff. So, we're able to make models with less data, right? And all the machine learning stuff in terms of training itself. So there's been a renaissance, in terms of, being able to create a lot more languages than you typically could have in the past, using traditional methods. And so, this is why it's a lot more prevalent now, for wider populations than it ever was before, right? And on an economical basis. And so that's been exciting. Now, of course, there's a backlash against a lot of this cloud stuff as well. And so a lot of folks are studying the use of, edge accelerators in order to capture and process data, in remote places, so that you don't have to actually send that information, to cloud-based. And I know, that's being looked at for both, from microphones to cameras, because people are worried, about what goes to the cloud.
Yeah, I think on one hand, people are worried and hesitant, but on the other hand, I see now there are toys that are coming out. I think there's a Barbie doll that actually you can ask it a million questions, also connected to the cloud and unlimited information. So it's interesting that there are just two sides of the spectrum going in different directions.
Yeah, I mean, everything's a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
I mean, it just is, right? One person's hammer is, to build Habitat for Humanity homes, and then for somebody else, they're going to hit somebody over the head with it. I mean, it's just,
yeah.
At the same time, I know it's seems to be on vogue in Silicon Valley to like Pontius Pilate to wash your hands of it, and I don't think so. I think you have to give people an expectation. Hey, here's how you use this for, for positive effects and use cases, and in other cases, you actually curtail your customer base. And see, this is why I think there's a duality with AI, whether it's supported by ads or not. I think folks that tend to support these things with ads, tend to really care about the subtleties of people, and to extract every possible way of figuring out your demographics and preferences and things of that sort. I prefer working in the enterprise software space, where I don't have to get to that level of understanding of a user, because we get paid and we perform a very serious business function for them. I don't need to know somebody's sexual orientation. I don't need to know if they're depressed or not. I mean, these are things that already, cross the threshold of normalcy and cross the threshold of permissible.
So who defines that threshold of permissible?
I think the founders of these companies should.
You think it's their responsibility?
I think it is their responsibility, but in many cases, you know, they get judged by Wall Street on having as wide an audience as possible in order to push the ads towards, and so they're probably very skittish about calling out certain behaviors and populations that are on their platforms.
Right.
And that's just that's a shame in some ways.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I think, is it the companies or is it the public that's responsible for, securing their own data and allowing what's permissible?
Yeah, but we have to be given a choice, right? So if Google gave me a choice or Facebook gave me a choice where I can pay a subscription and they don't have to bother, collecting, certain information from all of our online activities, I would pay it.
Yeah, but you are given a choice, Igor. Don't use Facebook. Don't use Google.
Yeah, but see, they've done such a great job weaving themselves into a myriad of applications where you have to use them as identity.
Yeah.
Certain apps, you don't have a choice but to use Facebook login or other things. And I know Apple's trying to correct, for that here shortly.
I actually do love it when I can use one app to log into another, just because it's, less things to remember. I agree with you that I think it's partly the companies, but I think it's partly the public. It should be, from both sides.
I mean, I'm guessing that a typical tobacco executive did not allow their family members to smoke. And what's very curious to me is the prevalence in Silicon Valley where they don't allow their own children to use social media and iPads and things of that sort.
Oh, okay.
And so, I think they know more than they're letting on.
Interesting. Where does it say? Did you read an article or about? Yeah, that's interesting. I haven't heard about that.
And part of it is just the learning how to be a human first before using these tools. You can play in the dirt, you can play outside, you can go swimming. There's a lot more to our experience than being connected to a bunch of wires and cables.
Yes, I agree. All right, so you were named the industry luminary by Speech Technology magazine. So the question here is, what do you think were the contributions that helped you to earn that recognition?
My parents are both artists, so I've always been thrilled with multimodal interaction. And in plain English, what that means is using the totality of our senses to interact with computers. And so speaking to them and gesturing towards them and seeing visualizations. I've been pushing that heavily. And that's why I was excited working on these AI assistants, because I felt it's sort of like opera. Opera is my favorite form of consuming music and dance and theater. It's all in one, right? And I felt multimodal is all in one. It interacts with all of our senses in order to propel information in our direction. And that's what I was really thrilled to work on.
Interesting. So you're also involved, I saw, in several organizations as a volunteer, kind of in this space. Can you talk about your motivation behind this? Why do you, what drives you, and how does this also drive the direction of your professional career?
So, I mean, there's anytime you take anything out to market, there's multiple facets associated with it, right? So you care about open standards. That's why, I chaired the Voice XML forum for a while. We had AT&T, Motorola, Nuance, and several other big companies on our board as well. Civic responsibility, community involvement, being entangled with academic institutions because they're a primordial ooze of next generation innovations, right? And lots of credit to our former VP of research, who created a myriad of relationships between our last company and Harvard's machine learning group, Aachen University, Johns Hopkins, so on and so forth. Community involvement to understand the interplay between the public sector and the right economic incentives for angel investors to make sure that they can push the resources in so that we can gestate these ideas and de-risk it as best as we can for them to take that journey with us. So there's so many facets to running these companies. You have to be intellectually curious about, you know, all of the various attributes that go into leading a success. It's you know, they say it's, you know, 3 legs of the stool 4. This is like an infinite number of legs that are necessary in order, you know, for you to create a very strong foundation for your efforts.
Mm-hmm. All right. Okay, so what is a goal that you have for yourself that you want to accomplish in the next, let's say, 12 to 18 months? It could be personal or professional or both.
Probably to continue growing the team and figuring out the very hard question of you know, traditional growth, you know, having a POC, getting to you know, deployments, and then doing a POC plus and getting even more deployments, and then POC plus plus, and just evolving that way. Or if we push the chips in all in and go land grab and make this as big as possible over the course of the next 12 to 24 months. I think you know, half of these experiences are you have a vision, a strategy, and you execute against that.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other half is just, you know, sensing the market, the timing, your team's capability, where the product is, where the technology is, and just using your intuition. You know, that for me is a thrill, because I think one of the best parts of these experiences is the fact that every day is different.
Yeah.
You have new challenges every day. The path, you know, from founding something to whatever its outcome is going to be, whether it's an IPO or an exit, is non-linear.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that really surprised me looking at our exit last time, and we were Amazon's first ever AI acquisition, is that there was no critical path. Every encounter, every customer, every partner, every piece of technology that we did, every experiment that we ran, every person that you know, joined the team was critical. There just wasn't one thing that I can say, okay, next time I do this, you know, do more of this and do less of this. It just wasn't there to be found. And so that was you know, fascinating, because a lot of people come to you and it's like, I remember seeing a documentary where you know, this kid asked the late comedian Gary Shandling what's the shortcut to comedy. I guess they didn't want to go on the road and go into smoky pens and things of that sort.
Yeah.
And he laughed and said, there is no shortcut.
Yeah.
There's just no shortcut to doing these things. And so the best thing you can do is start something in something you're really passionate about, and that is, it's your personal hobby. And then you won't feel the Chinese hours, you know, the 16-hour days, 7 days a week for years, if not a decade. So that's just the reality of it.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Once you start doing what you love and what you're passionate about, the time just flies and you don't notice it. Doesn't feel like work anymore. How big is the team now at Pryon?
We're, I think, 25 to 30 is what we'll end up being by the time this airs. And the motion is to just keep doubling and keep doubling and keep doubling, you know, as necessary. I have no fascination with running a team that's 10 or 10,000.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't have a fixed viewpoint on how large the company should get in terms of people.
Right.
I just have a viewpoint of us doing exactly what we need to do. And if that takes 10 people, that's fantastic. If it takes 10,000, that's fantastic as well. And everything in between. So I think people need to be mission oriented than you know, looking at some artificial arbiters of success.
Great. All right. The last question I have for you today, it will be the easiest. Igor, what do you like to do outside of work, like basically for fun, outside of AI?
Well, I think I just hinted in my last question. It's literally this. It's literally this. I mean, it's you know, of course, listening to music and playing chess and messing around with Legos. They all tend to be intellectual pursuits from one form or fashion, and they help you solve problems. art museums and things like that. As I mentioned before, because of my background,
Hmm.
you know, I, it resonated to me when Steve Jobs talked about the intersection of art and science, because I firmly believe that. I think one of the most disastrous things you can do when building an engineering team and a research team is just viewing them um, as literally engineers and scientists, and not viewing them as artists, just because people don't understand their medium,
Hmm.
right? There's so much elegance and passion in terms of what they do. You
Yeah.
can't take, somebody like John Carmack, who's blissful and well known for creating these masterful 3D environments, and have him write a queuing system for credit card processing. He would probably jump off a bridge. And so when you start thinking about that, in terms of the types of folks that get attracted to your endeavors, we'd rather have true believers than have people that are showing up for a job. And that's just a great place then, to be at.
Absolutely. All right. Well, Igor, thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much for being on Humans of Data Science.
Thanks for having me.